On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, 4-year-old Lucas sits at his kitchen table, drawing something that will change everything his mother believes about the impossible. With the focused intensity of someone much older, he sketches celestial objects and curved trajectories while speaking in scientific terms he's never been taught. When his confused mother asks what he's creating, Lucas looks up with those serious brown eyes and says something that will haunt her for the rest of her life. 7 days later, every major news outlet in the world will announce a discovery that matches his drawing with terrifying precision. But right now, in this moment, Marina has no idea that her son is about to predict one of the most significant astronomical events of the decade, using knowledge that should be impossible for any 4-year-old to possess. If this video reached you, it's because something in it is meant for you. Leave a like, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming, and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. Continuing here. The afternoon rain drummed against the kitchen window as Marina wiped down the counter for the 3rd time that day. Her 4-year-old son, Lucas, sat at the small wooden table, completely absorbed in his drawing. The house felt unusually quiet, except for the rhythmic patter of raindrops and the soft scratching of his crayon against paper. Marina glanced over at her son, noticing how intensely focused he was. Lucas had been working on the same piece of paper for the past hour, his small tongue poking out slightly in concentration. She had seen him create many pictures before, but something about his posture today seemed different, more serious, more deliberate. The crayon in his hand moved with surprising precision for a child his age. Marina had always been amazed by how steady his little hands could be when he was truly engaged in something. As an elementary school teacher, she had observed hundreds of children over the years, and Lucas definitely had an unusual attention span for someone who had just turned 4 last month. She finished organizing the last of the lunch dishes and walked over to where Lucas was working. The paper in front of him was covered with what appeared to be stars, but not the typical 5-pointed stars that most children his age would draw. These were more like circles with long, curved lines trailing behind them. The lines weren't straight either. They curved and swooped across the page in ways that seemed almost mathematical in their precision. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" Marina asked, pulling out the chair next to him and sitting down. Lucas looked up at her with those bright brown eyes that always seemed to hold more understanding than a 4-year-old should possess. "It's the visitor," he said simply, as if that explained everything. Marina studied the drawing more carefully. There were several of these star-like objects scattered across the page, but one in particular dominated the center. It was larger than the others, and the curved line behind it was much longer and more elaborate. The line seemed to start from one edge of the paper, curve around the central star-like object, and then trail off toward the opposite edge. "What kind of visitor?" she asked, genuinely curious now. Lucas set down his crayon and pointed to the largest drawing in the center. "This one. He's just passing through. He's not staying like the others." The phrase struck Marina as oddly mature for her son. Lucas had always been articulate for his age, but "just passing through" wasn't typical 4-year-old vocabulary. She had never heard him use that expression before. "Where is he passing through to?" she asked. Lucas picked up his crayon again and added a few more details to the curved line. "He's going home. But it's really, really far away. Farther than anything." Marina watched as her son continued to work on the drawing. The way he moved the crayon suggested he had a very clear vision of what he was trying to create. This wasn't the random scribbling she was used to seeing from children his age. There was intention behind every mark. "How do you know he's going home?" she asked. "Because he told me," Lucas replied matter-of-factly. "Well, not with words, but I can feel it. He's sad because he's been away for so long, and now he finally gets to go back. But he's also sad because people are going to be really curious about him, and he just wants to be left alone." Marina felt a small chill run down her spine. The way Lucas spoke about this visitor was so specific, so detailed. It was as if he was describing a real person, rather than something from his imagination. "When did he tell you this?" she asked carefully. Lucas shrugged, still focused on his drawing. "I don't know. I just know. Like how I know that ice cream is cold before I taste it." The comparison was simple enough for a child to make, but the underlying concept troubled Marina. Lucas was describing some kind of intuitive knowledge about something that, as far as she knew, existed only in his imagination. She decided to probe a little deeper. "What does this visitor look like?" Lucas paused in his drawing and looked up at her again. "You can't really see him with your eyes. Not regular eyes anyway. He's made of ice and rocks and stuff, but he's got light inside him. That's why he has the tail." Marina blinked. "A tail?" "Yeah, like a really long tail that glows. But it's not always there. Only when he gets close to hot things." Lucas resumed his drawing, adding what appeared to be small dots around the central figure. "These are the people who are going to look at him with their special machines." "Special machines?" "The big round things that look up at the sky. The ones that can see things that are really far away." Lucas made a circular motion with his free hand. "They're going to be really excited when they find him, but he's not going to stay long enough for them to learn everything they want to know." Marina stared at her son in amazement. He was describing telescopes, though she was certain she had never explained to him what telescopes were, or how they worked. And the detail about the tail only appearing when the object got close to hot things sounded remarkably like how comets behaved when they approached the sun. But how could Lucas possibly know about comets? They had never discussed astronomy beyond pointing out the moon and stars during their evening walks. Marina made a mental note to ask her husband David about whether he had been watching any space documentaries with Lucas recently. "Lucas, honey, where did you learn about the machines that look at the sky?" Her son looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "I don't know. I just know. Like how I know that water is wet." Another simple comparison. But Marina was beginning to feel increasingly unsettled. Lucas seemed to have knowledge about astronomical concepts that she was certain he had never been exposed to. "Can you tell me more about the visitor?" she asked. Lucas set down his crayon and turned to face her fully. "He's really old. Older than anything here. He came from a place where there's a different sun, and he's been traveling for a really, really long time. Longer than forever." "A different sun?" "Yeah. His home has a different star. Not like our sun. And the ice on him remembers that star. That's why he's special. The ice has memories." Marina felt her breath catch. Lucas was describing concepts that sounded remarkably similar to what she vaguely remembered from science classes about interstellar objects and how they might carry information about their origin systems. But there was no way her 4-year-old son could have learned about such advanced astronomical concepts. "What kind of memories does the ice have?" she asked. Lucas picked up a blue crayon and began adding small details to his drawing. "Happy memories and sad memories. Happy because he got to see so many beautiful things on his trip. Sad because he had to leave his family behind, and he won't see them again for a really long time." The emotional depth of Lucas's description was startling. He wasn't just recounting facts about this imaginary visitor. He was describing feelings and relationships in a way that suggested deep empathy for this cosmic traveler. "How long will it be before he sees his family again?" Marina asked. Lucas paused in his coloring and looked up at the ceiling, as if calculating something complex. "Maybe never. The trip back is really, really far, and he might get lost or something might happen to him on the way." There was genuine sadness in her son's voice as he said this. Marina reached over and gently touched his shoulder. "That does sound very sad," she said softly. "Yeah. That's why I wanted to draw him, so people would remember that he was here, even after he goes away." Lucas returned to his drawing with renewed focus. And so they would know that he wasn't trying to scare anybody. He's just trying to get home. Marina watched her son work for several more minutes, trying to process everything he had told her. The level of detail in his description was extraordinary, but what troubled her most was how emotionally invested he seemed in this story. Lucas wasn't just making up a fantasy. He appeared to genuinely care about this cosmic visitor and its journey. "Lucas, when you think about the visitor, do you see pictures in your head?" she asked. "Sometimes, but mostly I just feel things. Like when you're really happy or really sad, and you can feel it in your whole body. That's how I know about him." Marina nodded, though she wasn't sure she understood. "And you feel like he's coming here? To our planet?" "He's already on his way. He's been coming for a long time, but people don't know about him yet. They will soon, though. Maybe in a few days, or maybe a little longer." Lucas added a few more details to the curved line behind the central figure. "When they find him, they're going to be really surprised. They'll think he's the most interesting thing they've ever seen. Why will they think he's so interesting? Because he's not from here. He's from somewhere else entirely. Somewhere nobody has ever been." Lucas looked up at her with those serious brown eyes. "And because he's only going to visit once. After he leaves, he's never coming back." The finality in Lucas's voice sent another chill through Marina. There was something almost prophetic about the way he spoke, as if he was describing events that were destined to happen, rather than imagining possibilities. "Are you excited about people finding the visitor?" she asked. Lucas considered this question carefully. "I'm excited for the people who are going to study him, because they're going to learn really cool things. But I'm sad for him, because he just wants to go home, and people are going to bother him with all their machines and questions." Marina was struck by her son's ability to see the situation from multiple perspectives. He was showing empathy not just for the scientists who would study this visitor, but for the visitor itself. It was a level of emotional sophistication that seemed far beyond his years. "What kind of cool things will people learn?" she asked. "They'll learn about where he came from, about what it's like in other places in space, about how old things can be, and how far they can travel." Lucas paused in his drawing and looked thoughtful. "And maybe they'll learn that there are lots of other visitors out there, traveling between the stars, but most of them are too far away for us to see." Marina felt a growing sense of amazement at her son's words. He was describing concepts related to interstellar space, the age of cosmic objects, and the possibility of other similar phenomena. These were topics that required advanced scientific understanding, yet Lucas was discussing them as naturally as he might talk about his favorite toys. "Have you been thinking about the visitor for a long time?" she asked. "I think I've always known about him, like how you always know your own name, even when you're really little." Lucas set down his crayon and studied his completed drawing. "But lately I've been thinking about him more because he's getting closer." "Closer to what?" "Closer to where people can see him. Right now, he's still too far away. But soon, the people with the special machines will notice him, and then everyone will want to know about him." Marina looked at the drawing again, trying to understand what her son was seeing in his mind. The central figure with its long, curved tail did look remarkably like artistic representations of comets she had seen in books and documentaries. But the level of detail Lucas had included, and the scientific accuracy of his descriptions, seemed impossible for a 4-year-old to have created on his own. "Lucas, can you tell me what the visitor looks like when you picture him in your mind?" Marina asked. Her son closed his eyes for a moment, as if accessing some internal vision. "He's like a big snowball, but not perfectly round, more like a potato made of ice and rocks. And he's spinning, but really slowly. When he gets close to our sun, the ice starts to melt a little bit, and that makes the tail." Marina felt her heart skip a beat. Lucas had just described the basic structure and behavior of a comet with remarkable accuracy. The irregular shape, the composition of ice and rock, the rotation, and the formation of a tail due to solar heating were all correct details about how comets actually worked. "How do you know about the ice melting?" she asked. "Because that's what happens when ice gets warm, like when you take ice cubes out of the freezer and leave them on the counter." Lucas opened his eyes and looked at her. "But in space, the melted ice doesn't just make a puddle. It makes a big cloud that stretches out behind the visitor like a really long scarf. The simplicity of his analogy was perfect for a child, but the underlying understanding was sophisticated. Lucas was describing the process of sublimation and the formation of a comet's coma and tail in terms that made sense to him, but the scientific concepts were accurate. "And you said people will use special machines to see him?" Marina prompted. "Yeah, the big round things that look like giant eyes. They can see things that are really, really far away, even farther than airplanes can fly." Lucas picked up his drawing and held it up for her to see better. "The people who use those machines are going to be really excited because they've never seen anything like him before." "What makes him different from other things they've seen?" Lucas set the drawing back down and pointed to the curved line behind the central figure. "See how his path is different. Most of the things that visit our sun come back again and again, like they're going in circles. But he's only coming once. His path is like a big curve that goes away and never comes back." Marina stared at her son in astonishment. He was describing the difference between elliptical and hyperbolic orbits, concepts that were typically taught in advanced physics or astronomy courses. The idea that some objects followed closed orbits around the sun, while others followed open trajectories that carried them away forever, was not something a 4-year-old should understand. "How do you know his path is different?" she asked. "Because I can feel it. When I think about him, I can feel how lonely his journey is. He's not part of our family of planets and moons and other things. He's just visiting, and then he has to keep going." Lucas traced the curved line on his drawing with his finger. "It makes me sad, but it also makes me happy because he gets to see so many different places." The emotional component of Lucas's understanding was what struck Marina most. He wasn't just reciting facts about orbital mechanics. He was connecting with the emotional implications of an object's trajectory through space, the loneliness of a hyperbolic orbit, the temporary nature of the visit, the bittersweet aspect of a cosmic journey that would never return to its starting point. "Lucas, when you think about the visitor, do you ever feel like you've seen him before?" Marina asked carefully. Her son considered this question with the same seriousness he had shown throughout their conversation. "Not seen him exactly, but I feel like I know him. Like when you meet someone new but they feel familiar, like you've been friends for a long time." Marina nodded, though she wasn't sure she fully understood what Lucas meant. "And you feel like other people are going to discover him soon?" "Really soon. Maybe this week, or maybe next week, but definitely soon." Lucas looked up at her with complete confidence. "And when they do, it's going to be on the news and everything. People are going to be really excited because they've never found anything like him before." The specificity of Lucas's prediction was unsettling. He wasn't just saying that someday, somewhere, astronomers might discover an interesting object. He was predicting that within the next week or two, there would be a significant astronomical discovery that would make the news. "What will make this discovery so special?" Marina asked. "Because he comes from another star. Not our star. A different one, really far away." Lucas picked up his crayon again and began adding small details around the edges of his drawing. "Most of the things that visit our sun were born here, in our neighborhood. But he was born somewhere else entirely, and he's been traveling between the stars for a really long time." Marina felt a chill run down her spine again. Lucas was describing an interstellar object, something that originated in another star system and was passing through ours. Such objects were extremely rare and scientifically significant. The first confirmed interstellar object had been discovered only a few years ago and had caused tremendous excitement in the scientific community. But how could her 4-year-old son possibly know about such concepts? And how could he be predicting the discovery of another such object with such confidence? "Lucas, have you told anyone else about the visitor?" she asked. "No, just you. I wanted to draw him first, so I could show you what he looks like." Lucas held up his drawing again. "Do you think other people would want to see my picture?" Marina looked at the drawing with new eyes. What she had initially seen as a child's imaginative artwork now appeared to be a remarkably accurate representation of an astronomical phenomenon. The central object with its irregular shape, the long curved tail, the trajectory that suggested a hyperbolic orbit, even the small dots representing telescopes or observatories. I think your picture is very special, Lucas. Very special indeed. Her son beamed with pride. I'm glad you like it. I worked really hard to get it right. You certainly did. Can you tell me anything else about the visitor? Lucas set down his crayon and folded his hands in his lap, adopting the serious posture he used when he was about to share something important. He's carrying messages. What kind of messages? Not messages with words. Messages about where he came from. About what it's like in other places in space. About how things are made and how they change over time. Lucas paused, as if searching for the right words. It's like he's a letter from another family, telling us about their home. The poetic nature of Lucas's description was beautiful, but it also contained sophisticated scientific concepts. The idea that interstellar objects could carry information about their origin systems, about the processes of planetary formation and stellar evolution in other parts of the galaxy, was exactly why astronomers were so excited about studying such visitors. And you think people will be able to read these messages? Marina asked. Some of them. The people with the special machines will be able to learn some things about where he came from and what he's made of. But they won't be able to learn everything before he goes away. Lucas looked slightly sad. He's moving too fast, and he won't stay long enough for them to ask all their questions. Marina was amazed by her son's understanding of the challenges involved in studying fast-moving astronomical objects. The limited observation windows, the difficulty of gathering comprehensive data before an object moved too far away, the frustration of having more questions than time to answer them. Are you sad that he won't stay longer? She asked. A little bit, but I understand why he can't stay. He has somewhere else to be, and he's already been traveling for such a long time. Lucas picked up his drawing and studied it carefully. I just hope the people who study him will be kind. He's not trying to cause any trouble. He's just trying to get home. The empathy in Lucas's voice was remarkable. He was expressing concern for the feelings of a cosmic object, treating it as if it were a living being with emotions and motivations. It was a level of emotional connection that seemed far beyond what a 4-year-old should be capable of. Marina reached over and gently touched her son's hand. I think you have a very special understanding of the visitor, Lucas, and I think your drawing captures something important about him. Lucas smiled up at her. Thank you, Mama. I hope when people find him, they'll remember that he's just trying to go home. As Marina looked at her son's earnest face, and then at his remarkably detailed drawing, she felt a mixture of wonder and concern. Lucas had demonstrated knowledge about astronomical concepts that seemed impossible for someone his age to possess. His predictions about an imminent discovery were specific and confident, and his emotional connection to this cosmic visitor was profound and moving. She made a mental note to save the drawing and to pay close attention to any astronomical news in the coming days. If Lucas's predictions proved accurate, she would need to seriously reconsider her understanding of what her 4-year-old son was capable of. For now, though, she simply sat with him in the quiet kitchen, listening to the rain against the window, and marveling at the mystery of her remarkable child. The next few days passed in a strange blur of normalcy, punctuated by moments of profound unease. Marina found herself watching Lucas more carefully than usual, looking for signs of the unusual knowledge he had displayed during their conversation about the visitor. But her son seemed perfectly ordinary, playing with his toys, asking for snacks, and getting excited about cartoons just like any other 4-year-old. She had carefully folded his drawing and placed it in a folder with his other artwork, but she found herself taking it out several times each day to study it again. The more she looked at it, the more convinced she became that there was something extraordinary about the level of detail Lucas had included. The curved trajectory, the irregular shape of the central object, The way he had positioned the small dots representing telescopes around the edges of the paper, as if they were all focused on the same target. David had come home from work that Tuesday evening to find Marina sitting at the kitchen table with the drawing spread out in front of her, a notebook beside her filled with her attempts to record everything Lucas had said about the visitor. "What's all this?" he had asked, loosening his tie and looking over her shoulder. Marina had explained the entire conversation, watching her husband's expression shift from amusement to confusion to concern as she recounted Lucas's detailed descriptions of astronomical phenomena. "Honey, he's 4 years old," David had said gently. "Kids have amazing imaginations. Remember when he spent 3 weeks convinced that there were friendly dinosaurs living in our backyard?" "This is different," Marina had insisted. The level of scientific accuracy in what he described, the specific terminology he used, the confidence in his predictions about a discovery happening soon. This isn't typical childhood fantasy. David had studied the drawing for several minutes, his engineering background allowing him to appreciate the mathematical precision of the curved lines Lucas had drawn. "It is remarkably detailed for someone his age," he had admitted. But where could he have learned about interstellar objects and orbital mechanics? We don't watch science documentaries with him, and he's not reading astronomy textbooks. That had been the question that haunted Marina for the rest of the week. She had quietly questioned Lucas about whether he had seen anything about space on television or heard adults talking about astronomy, but her son had seemed genuinely puzzled by her inquiries. As far as he was concerned, his knowledge about the visitor was simply something he had always known, like knowing that the sky was blue or that water was wet. By Friday, Marina had almost convinced herself that David was right. Lucas had an exceptional imagination and had somehow cobbled together fragments of information from various sources to create his elaborate story about the cosmic visitor. Children were remarkably good at absorbing information from their environment, even when adults weren't aware they were paying attention. But then Saturday morning arrived, and everything changed. Marina was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when she heard the familiar sound of the morning news program starting in the living room. David always watched the news while drinking his coffee, a routine that had become as predictable as sunrise. Lucas was at the kitchen table, working on a new drawing, this one featuring what appeared to be rockets and planets. She was cracking eggs into a pan when she heard the news anchor's voice take on the excited tone that usually accompanied major breaking stories. "We begin this morning with extraordinary news from the world of astronomy. Scientists using the Atlas telescope system have announced the discovery of what appears to be only the third confirmed interstellar object ever detected passing through our solar system." Marina's hand froze halfway to the salt shaker. She felt a cold sensation spreading through her chest as the anchor continued. The object, designated 3I Atlas, was first spotted earlier this week by the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System. What makes this discovery particularly significant is that preliminary analysis suggests the object originated from outside our solar system and is following a hyperbolic trajectory that will carry it away from the sun and back into interstellar space. The salt shaker slipped from Marina's fingers and clattered onto the counter. She turned toward the living room, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "David," she called, her voice barely above a whisper. The object appears to be composed primarily of ice and rocky material, similar to comets from our own solar system, but spectral analysis indicates a chemical composition that differs significantly from local objects, confirming its interstellar origin. Marina walked slowly toward the living room, each step feeling like she was moving through thick water. Lucas looked up from his drawing as she passed. "Mama, are you okay? You look funny." She couldn't answer. She could only stare at the television screen, where a computer-generated image showed a small, irregular object with a long, curved tail following a trajectory that looked exactly like the path Lucas had drawn just 4 days earlier. David was sitting on the edge of the couch, his coffee mug forgotten in his hands, staring at the screen with the same expression of shock that Marina felt on her own face. "The discovery has generated tremendous excitement in the astronomical community," the anchor continued. Dr. Sarah Chen from the International Astronomical Union explains why this find is so significant. The screen cut to a recorded interview with a woman in a white lab coat standing in front of what appeared to be a large telescope facility. Interstellar objects like 3I Atlas are incredibly rare, Dr. Chen explained. They provide us with a unique opportunity to study material that formed in another star system, potentially billions of years ago. The chemical signatures we can detect tell us about conditions in distant parts of the galaxy that we could never otherwise observe directly. Marina sank onto the couch next to David, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. The scientist's words were echoing almost exactly what Lucas had told her about the visitor carrying messages, about where it came from, and what it was like in other places in space. The object is currently too faint to be visible to the naked eye, Dr. Chen continued, but our most powerful telescopes are tracking its progress as it approaches its closest point to the sun before beginning its journey back into interstellar space. This will be our only opportunity to study this visitor, as its hyperbolic orbit means it will never return to our solar system. David set down his coffee mug with shaking hands and turned to look at Marina. "This is impossible," he whispered. On the screen, the news program was showing a time-lapse animation of the object's predicted path through the solar system. The curved trajectory that started from the edge of the solar system, swept around the sun, and then headed back out into space was identical to the path Lucas had drawn with his crayons. Scientists estimate that 3I Atlas has been traveling through interstellar space for potentially millions of years before entering our solar system. The object's composition suggests it formed in the outer regions of another star system, possibly around a star very different from our own sun. Marina felt tears beginning to form in her eyes. Lucas had told her that the visitor came from a place with a different star, that the ice on it remembered that star, that it had been traveling for longer than forever. "How is this possible?" David asked, his voice barely audible. Marina couldn't answer. She was thinking about her 4-year-old son sitting at the kitchen table just a few feet away, calmly working on his drawing as if the most significant astronomical discovery in years was simply something he had always known would happen. The news program continued with more technical details about the discovery, interviews with excited astronomers, and speculation about what scientists might learn from studying the object during its brief passage through the solar system. Every detail confirmed what Lucas had told her. The object was invisible to the naked eye, but detectable by powerful telescopes. It was composed of ice and rock. It came from another star system. It would only visit once before disappearing forever. When the news segment finally ended and moved on to other stories, Marina and David sat in stunned silence. The implications of what they had just witnessed were too enormous to process immediately. "We need to talk to Lucas," David said finally. Marina nodded, though she wasn't sure what they could possibly say to their son. How do you ask a 4-year-old to explain knowledge that seems to transcend the normal boundaries of human understanding? They found Lucas exactly where Marina had left him, still working peacefully on his drawing of rockets and planets. He looked up as they approached, his face brightening with the innocent smile that had always melted Marina's heart. "Did you see the news about the visitor?" he asked casually, as if he were asking about the weather. Marina felt her breath catch. "You knew it was going to be on the news?" Lucas nodded matter-of-factly. "I told you people were going to find him soon. I'm glad they did. Now they can learn about where he came from." David knelt down beside Lucas's chair, his face a mixture of wonder and concern. "Lucas, buddy, how did you know about the visitor before the scientists found him?" Their son considered this question with the same serious expression he had worn during his conversation with Marina earlier in the week. "I don't know how I know. I just do. Like how I know that you love me, even when you don't say it." The simplicity of his answer was both beautiful and deeply unsettling. Lucas was describing a form of intuitive knowledge that seemed to operate outside the normal channels of learning and experience. "Can you tell us more about how you know things?" Marina asked gently. Lucas set down his crayon and turned to face both of his parents. Sometimes I just know things that are going to happen. Not all things, just some things. Usually things that are far away or really important. He paused, as if trying to find the right words. It's like having a special kind of dream, except I'm awake. Marina exchanged a glance with David. They were both thinking the same thing. Their son was describing what sounded like some form of precognitive ability, a concept that challenged everything they thought they understood about how the world worked. Do you know other things that are going to happen? David asked carefully. Lucas nodded. Some things, but I don't always understand what they mean until they happen. He picked up his crayon again and added a few more details to his rocket drawing. The visitor was easy to understand because he wanted people to know about him. He was lonely and wanted to share his story. Marina felt a chill run down her spine. Lucas was speaking about the interstellar object as if it were a conscious being with feelings and motivations, just as he had done during their earlier conversation. Lucas, when you think about the visitor, do you feel like you're talking to him? She asked. Not talking exactly. More like feeling what he feels. He's been traveling alone for such a long time, and he's happy that people finally noticed him. But he's also sad because he can't stay. Lucas looked up at his parents with those serious brown eyes. He wants people to remember him after he goes away. The emotional depth of Lucas's connection to the object was extraordinary. He wasn't just predicting astronomical events. He was empathizing with a cosmic traveler in a way that suggested a profound level of spiritual or psychic sensitivity. David sat down heavily in the chair across from Lucas. Son, what you're describing is very unusual. Most people can't know things before they happen, and they can't feel what distant objects are feeling. Lucas shrugged, as if his abilities were the most natural thing in the world. Maybe most people just don't pay attention. There are lots of things happening all the time that people don't notice. Marina was struck by the wisdom in her son's observation. Perhaps there were forms of information and connection that existed beyond the normal range of human perception, and perhaps some individuals were more sensitive to these subtle channels of communication. Are there other visitors that you know about? She asked. Lucas nodded enthusiastically. Oh yes, lots of them. But most of them are too far away for the people with the special machines to see, and some of them don't want to be noticed. He returned to his drawing, adding what appeared to be a small figure waving from one of the rockets. But there will be more discoveries. People are getting better at looking for things that are far away. Marina felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension at her son's prediction. If Lucas was right, the discovery of 3I Atlas was just the beginning of a new era of astronomical discoveries. When will the next discovery happen? David asked. Lucas paused in his drawing and looked thoughtful. I'm not sure exactly. Time is funny when you're thinking about things that are really far away. But I think it will be soon, maybe before my next birthday. Marina made a mental note to pay close attention to astronomical news over the next few months. If Lucas's predictions continued to prove accurate, she would need to seriously consider the possibility that her son possessed some form of extraordinary perceptual ability. For the rest of the morning, they sat with Lucas as he worked on his drawing, asking gentle questions about his unusual knowledge and trying to understand the nature of his connection to cosmic events. Lucas answered their questions with the same matter-of-fact attitude he had shown throughout the week, treating his abilities as simply another aspect of who he was. As Marina watched her son carefully color in the details of his rockets and planets, she realized that their family's life had been fundamentally changed by the events of the past week. They were no longer just an ordinary family dealing with the normal challenges of raising a young child. They were now the guardians of a child who seemed to possess knowledge and abilities that transcended conventional understanding. The discovery of 3I Atlas had validated Lucas's predictions in a way that could not be dismissed or explained away. Whatever was happening with their son, it was real, and it was extraordinary. Marina reached over and gently touched Lucas's hand as he worked. We love you very much, sweetheart. No matter what special things you can do, you'll always be our little boy. Lucas looked up at her with a smile that seemed to contain wisdom far beyond his years. "I know, Mama. And the visitor knows that people love him too, even though they just met him. That's why he's not scared of all the attention. He knows it comes from curiosity and wonder, not from wanting to hurt him." As Marina looked into her son's eyes, she saw not just the innocent child she had always known, but also something deeper and more mysterious. Lucas was a bridge between the ordinary world of everyday life and the vast, incomprehensible cosmos that surrounded them. Through him, they were being given a glimpse into the profound connections that existed between all things, connections that most people never had the opportunity to perceive. The morning news had confirmed that their son was truly extraordinary. Now they had to figure out what that meant for their family and for Lucas's future. The weeks following the discovery of 3i Atlas brought a strange new rhythm to their household. Marina found herself documenting everything Lucas said about space, cosmic visitors, and his mysterious feelings about distant objects. What had started as a mother's curiosity about her child's unusual drawing had evolved into something that challenged everything she thought she understood about the nature of knowledge and perception. Lucas continued to be a perfectly normal 4-year-old in most respects. He played with his toys, watched cartoons, and occasionally threw tantrums when he didn't get his way. But interspersed with these ordinary moments were instances of profound insight that left both Marina and David speechless. 3 weeks after the news about 3i Atlas, Lucas was playing in the backyard when he suddenly stopped and looked up at the sky with that familiar, serious expression. "The visitor is getting ready to say goodbye," he announced to Marina, who was tending to her small garden nearby. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" she asked, setting down her watering can. "He's reached the closest point to our son that he's going to get. Now he's starting his journey back home." Lucas pointed toward a section of sky that looked completely empty to Marina's eyes. "The people with the special machines are working really hard to learn everything they can before he gets too far away." Marina felt the now familiar chill that accompanied Lucas's astronomical observations. She made a mental note to check the news that evening to see if there were any updates about 3i Atlas reaching its perihelion, the closest point in its orbit to the sun. That night, the science section of the news confirmed exactly what Lucas had predicted. 3i Atlas had reached its closest approach to the sun and was now beginning its journey back toward interstellar space. Astronomers around the world were working frantically to gather as much data as possible before the object moved too far away to study effectively. "How does he know these things?" David asked Marina as they watched the news coverage together after Lucas had gone to bed. Marina shook her head. "I've stopped trying to figure out how. I'm more interested in understanding what it means." Over the following days, Lucas continued to provide updates on the visitor's journey with the casual accuracy that had become his trademark. He drew pictures showing the object's path away from the sun, described the excitement of the scientists studying it, and expressed a kind of bittersweet satisfaction that people were learning from the visitor's brief passage through their solar system. "He's happy that he could teach people things about where he came from," Lucas told Marina one afternoon, as they sat together on the front porch. "But he's also excited to continue his journey. He's been away from home for so long." Marina was struck by the emotional complexity of Lucas's relationship with this cosmic object. He seemed to genuinely care about its well-being and to understand its motivations in a way that suggested a deep empathetic connection. "Do you think you'll always be able to feel things about visitors from space?" she asked. Lucas considered this question carefully. "I think so. But maybe not always as clearly as I can now. Sometimes when people grow up, they forget how to pay attention to the quiet things." The wisdom in her son's observation was profound. Marina wondered if Lucas was describing a form of sensitivity that many children possessed, but lost as they became more focused on the practical demands of adult life. As autumn progressed, Lucas's predictions about astronomical discoveries continued to prove accurate. He correctly anticipated the announcement of a new exoplanet discovery, predicted when a particular asteroid would make headlines for its close approach to Earth, and even described the emotional reactions of scientists to their findings with remarkable precision. But it was his ongoing connection to 3i Atlas that remained the most extraordinary aspect of his abilities. Even as the object moved farther from the sun and became increasingly difficult for telescopes to track, Lucas continued to provide updates on its journey. "He's getting quieter now," Lucas told Marina one evening in late November. "The farther he gets from our sun, the less I can feel him. But he's peaceful. He knows he's going home." Marina had been following the scientific coverage of 3i Atlas closely, and she knew that the object was indeed becoming more difficult to observe as it moved away from the inner solar system. The fact that Lucas's emotional connection to the object was fading at the same rate as the astronomer's ability to study it seemed to confirm the reality of whatever mysterious link existed between her son and the cosmic visitor. In early December, Lucas made his final observation about 3i Atlas. "He's saying goodbye now," he told Marina as they walked home from the grocery store. "He wants to thank everyone for being so interested in his story. And he wants people to remember that there are lots of other visitors out there, traveling between the stars." That evening, Marina checked the astronomical news and found that several observatories had announced they were ending their observation campaigns for 3i Atlas. The object had moved too far away to gather meaningful additional data, and it was time to focus their resources on other targets. The timing of Lucas's farewell to the visitor coincided perfectly with the scientific community's conclusion of their study. It was as if her son had been serving as some kind of emotional liaison between humanity and this cosmic traveler, helping to facilitate understanding and connection across the vast distances of space. As winter settled over their small town, Marina reflected on the extraordinary journey their family had taken over the past few months. What had begun with a simple drawing on a rainy afternoon had evolved into a profound exploration of the mysteries of consciousness, perception, and the connections that existed between all things in the universe. Lucas continued to demonstrate his unusual abilities, but Marina noticed that he seemed to be growing more selective about what he shared. It was as if he was learning to manage his sensitivity, choosing when to pay attention to the cosmic information that flowed through his awareness. "Do you ever feel overwhelmed by all the things you can sense?" Marina asked him one evening, as she tucked him into bed. Lucas shook his head. "Not really. It's like having really good hearing. Most of the time you just ignore the sounds that aren't important, but when something interesting happens, you pay attention." Marina marveled at her son's ability to integrate his extraordinary perceptual abilities into a normal childhood. He had found a way to be both a cosmic sensitive and a regular 4-year-old, switching between these aspects of himself with remarkable ease. As Christmas approached, Lucas surprised his parents with a new drawing. This one showed not a single cosmic visitor, but dozens of them, scattered across a star-filled sky. Some were approaching, some were departing, and some were simply passing through on journeys that would take them to destinations beyond imagination. "There are so many travelers out there," he explained to Marina and David as he showed them his artwork. "Most people don't know about them yet, but someday they will. And when they do, they'll understand that we're all connected, even across the biggest distances." Marina looked at the drawing and felt a profound sense of hope. Through Lucas's eyes, the universe was not a cold, empty void, but a vibrant community of travelers, each carrying stories and messages from distant homes. The discovery of 3i Atlas had been just the beginning of humanity's awareness of this cosmic neighborhood. On New Year's Eve, as Marina and David sat on their couch watching the celebration on television, Lucas came padding out of his bedroom in his pajamas. "I wanted to say thank you," he said, climbing up between his parents. "Thank you for what, sweetheart?" Marina asked, wrapping her arms around him. "For believing me about the visitor. For not thinking I was just making things up." Lucas snuggled closer to his mother. "It made me feel less lonely to be able to share what I was feeling." Marina felt tears forming in her eyes. She realized that Lucas's extraordinary abilities came with their own challenges. Being able to perceive things that others couldn't must sometimes feel isolating and overwhelming. "We'll always believe you," David said, reaching over to ruffle his son's hair. and will always love you, no matter what amazing things you can do." Lucas smiled up at his parents. "I know. And that's what made the visitor feel better too. Knowing that people cared about him and wanted to understand his story." As the clock struck midnight and the new year began, Marina reflected on the profound gift her family had received. Through Lucas's connection to 3i Atlas, they had been given a glimpse into the vast, interconnected web of existence that connected all things across space and time. The little boy who had drawn a cosmic visitor on a rainy afternoon had opened their eyes to wonders they never could have imagined. And in doing so, he had reminded them that the universe was not just a collection of distant objects, but a living community of travelers, each with their own stories to tell and their own journeys to complete. 6 months later, when the next interstellar object was discovered by astronomers, Marina was not surprised to find Lucas at the kitchen table, already working on a new drawing. This time, he looked up at her with a knowing smile. "This one's different," he said simply. "She's not just passing through. She's bringing a message that people really need to hear." Marina sat down beside her son, ready once again to witness the extraordinary through the eyes of a child who saw the universe not as a distant mystery, but as a neighborhood full of friends waiting to be discovered. Stories like this connect us in ways we don't always understand. Show that you're here. Leave a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what else you'd like to discover. Sometimes the most profound truths come through the most innocent voices, reminding us that wonder and connection exist everywhere, even in the vast darkness between the stars. The universe is full of travelers, each carrying their own stories home,